When assessing your organization's culture and capability for innovation management, you should start with a scope, which is identifying the strategic direction of the organization, short and long-term objectives, and also known obstacles. The next step after that is to interview key stakeholders, internal and external key stakeholders. The step after the interview is to set up and collect data about the organization. What we have seen is that when you assess an organization, you need to carefully design the collection of the data. You need to group the organization into many groups, and you have to identify who to assess in these groups. Should it be all people in the groups, or should you randomize a number of people in the groups? And of course, that's dependent on how large the organization is. After you have done that, you should prepare very carefully for a rollout and a rollout plan where you actually reach out in the organization, internally and externally, and say, hey, we are now going to assess your capability and culture for innovation. And doing a 360 innovation assessment means that you do a 360 turn. You look internally, and you look externally, and you look on all levels. After that, you do typically a quantitative analysis where you try to find patterns in the data. You do a qualitative analysis where you collect information from the field with field studies or in-depth interviews. In both the qualitative and the quantitative part of the analysis, you form hypotheses and you try to verify or react them by testing them. Then you structure key findings. You compare and contrast the key findings, and you outline recommendation with very tangible steps to take. Then you typically present them, and you also link them to implementation plans. And this is typically about removing blockers, using amplifiers, and it could also be about implementing a totally new innovation system, or it could be revising an innovation system based on the readiness map that you are ironing out doing a 360-degree analysis. It could also be about how you're handling the portfolio, and it could also be that you actually decide to work on certain capabilities, everything from removing blockers to using amplifiers, or train the organization for specific need in the future. It could be leadership-wise, strategy-wise, capability-wise, and based on that, outlining transformation plans. And then you can look back and reassess, for instance, every 6 months or every 12 months to make sure that you stay on track. When assessing and collecting quantitative and qualitative information, call for codifying. And to codify, you can use the framework that we ironed out over years based on the current thinking, the Innovation 360 framework, based on the why and the what and the how questions. So reaching out and pose questions about why and what, which is aspiration questions, and how, which is ability questions, and doing that in a way so you actually can codify what kind of why, what, and how questions do you have responded to, qualitative and quantitative. Then you can use the codification to find patterns, and based on the patterns you can find hypotheses, but you can also react or accept hypotheses based on the very early stage work, or maybe even before you start an assignment. or you can use it to challenge former assignments and hypotheses that is made. There is a theory called grounded theory that is particularly useful when you work with analysis, which is basically that you codify quantitative and qualitative data and you try to find patterns to form a theory which you react or approve. And you use that theory to give advice. And that is also the whole kernel of the Innovation 360 approach.